Welcome into the DNVR Rockies Podcast presented by Strava Craft Coffee. Remember to use that promo code DNVR20 and you will get 20% off your entire purchase of that CBD-infused, deliciously rich, potentially life-altering Strava Craft Coffee. I am your host, Drew Creasman. I am the managing editor of DNVR Rockies. With me, as always, is our beat writer, Patrick Lyons. It's still Strava hours if you're joining us on the live here. If you've subscribed to the YouTube, then you got a notification that we were going early. So we're drinking our Strava Craft coffee still in the morning. Strava hours, by the way, for me are 8 to noon. If anyone was, and that's a real thing in my house. That is just, those are the facts of the case.
What if you get up at 9? Does it then move to 9 to 1?
You know, I like that. I should implement that strategy. Yeah. You know, I can push it back. And on night games that are going late, it starts up again at like 10 if I'm down at Coors Field. But they don't have Strava. I'm going to have to start taking it with me now that I've got on that. So on today's episode, we got to get hype for the Colorado Rockies home opener. We got to talk about Jon Gray on the hill. We got to talk about potential revenge against these San Diego Padres. Maybe look ahead a little bit at the importance of this entire homestand. Sadly, Patrick, we do have to start with a little bit of news today. I want us to do this quickly, like ripping off the Band-Aid. This is stuff that's going on that can't be avoided. Let's do this up top so that we can end and have a very long conversation about just being excited about the home opener and everything that's going on. But we did, of course, get some news today. A few members of the Cardinals now tested positive. This thing no longer contained entirely even to the east. Eyebrows raising, people worrying. We don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole. Patrick, both you and I said we'd be surprised if they were able to finish the season, at least in any kind of, you know, what we might even consider traditional based on what we have so far with like all teams playing 60 games and balanced schedules. And it's like, whatever the finish of the season is going to look like, I think it's just going to be different than even how they envisioned once they restarted.
It's pretty wild. Yeah, Mark Saxon was the one who reported that he had it confirmed that it was 2 Cardinals players. The only thing he's saying is that they are 2 pitchers. As per, The Athletic, they've decided they're not going to reveal the identities of the players as it's, maybe a little unjust. So they're not doing that. And I definitely respect that and get behind that entirely. But you're right. Now it's no longer in the East. Now it's in the Central. We know it's everywhere in the United States. We know it's all over the world in various corners of our planet, and it's a very real thing. The number is now up to, I think it's 15 games that have been played. You'll probably see something around saying 30 games, but really that means there are multiple teams. So when the Phillies and Marlins were canceled, they both lost a game. But how many games were canceled? One. So take that number, divide it in 2. So so 15 games, but we are looking at just under 10%. So that's a decent amount. And we just got started doing this. We don't know that the Marlins are going to be ready to go on Monday. We don't know if the Phillies are going to be able to go after they've had a couple players, or rather one staff member, one coach. So it's going to be touch and go. Of course, that's somebody on Twitter reaching out to us. We love that. We love communicating with you guys that are listening on Twitter about like, well, hey, what's the point of the satellite squad and the taxi squad that's there? And that's absolutely their purpose, is to basically say, we want you to have access to, minor league players or quadruple A players, just bodies. Unfortunately, we have to put it like that. But MLB hasn't figured out a way to implement that, because you've got all these players in the Miami clubhouse that have tested positive. How do you carefully get them out? And what about the players who the tests have yet to kind of show? It's still in that incubation period. Yeah. So we don't know who to take out. And because of that, you can't just add anybody back in so that the Marlins can go forward with it. So many details and so many wrinkles to iron out. And keep it locked here, and we're going to keep you updated on that as best as we can.
Yeah, that's all we can do. In the meantime, as long as there are games, we're going to I have to stay, at least 60%, 70%, 80% focused on that until it becomes something that really does overtake the entire conversation. And we'll just have to wait and see how Rob Manfred and the rest of the leadership group there at MLB handles this. We'll just have to find out. Yeah, that's all I want to do with that today. It's a special day. We're going to have to get back into it. Let's do what we can for this one day. To put that aside and talk some baseball, Patrick, I'm going to be down at the DNVR bar both before and after the game. So while it is still Strava hours, I'm not cracking open a Breck brew to start talking about the on-field stuff just yet this morning. Of course, I will be down there drinking several of them after the game because I gotta do some work today. Gotta be down there at Coors Field. How about that? But oh yeah, and by the way, you should also all go out there and get yourself some Breck brew, and you should get them there from Davidson's. You know that you can get them down at the farmhouse if you call 303. Oh, well, I just moved away from the number. I don't have it memorized. 303-803-1380 from noon to 8 p.m. Use code DNVR, and you'll save $5 on both the meal and the beer. If you can't swing by there, like I said, get it from Davidson's, curbside pickup and delivery. And you'll be able to kick back with your Breck brew this evening and watch the Wolf of Blake Street return to Blake Street for a pitching contest. Well, it'll be a full baseball contest, but Jon Gray is going to do everything he can to pick up where he left off last year. Patrick posting, I think it was a 3.50 ERA at Coors Field in a year where the average ERA, that's redundant, isn't it? An ERA is already an average. So the ERA at Coors Field among all pitchers was above 5.5 runs. Jon Gray, 2 runs underneath that. Obviously, strangely enough, you could argue he had the weakest start of any of the guys in the rotation so far this season. First time through, wasn't able to complete 5 innings, did give up a couple runs there. So what are we looking for? What are we expecting? And how strange is it going to be, do you think, for him in particular to be in this scenario?
I think it'll be strange in a good way. I think it'll very much just eliminate any of the typical stressors or any of the anxiety riddling moments that can come about with a home opener. It's not opening day, but it is, right? It's you're opening that new ballpark. Everyone in the stadium is their version of opening day, and game one of anything is an indicator of what you're going to do for the entirety of the season. It's not fair in that way, whether your team is playing great or playing poorly, but you can feel that in that moment. And that happened to Jon Gray, for better or worse, in 2017, that wild card game. And then he started the next game in Arizona in 2018, and you kind of saw that worst case scenario of Jon Gray. Now that it's not a factor. Now it's just Jon Gray being Jon Gray against the Padres, a team that he's pitched pretty well against, especially in San Diego. So now being at Coors Field, it'll of course be a little bit different, but I think it'll really feel like a middle of the season start. He's, after a couple good starts, it'll feel like one of those days where you get up and go, everything just feels good, and that's true. It's not. It feels good, but ooh, this is a big start, or oh man, this is for first place, or oh, this is opening day. It feels good, and it is good, and I think that's, if it's going to help anybody in this rotation, I think you might put Jon Gray at the top of that list for pitching in this craziness that is 2020. I think he might benefit the most out of all of them.
Yeah, I really like that take for a number of reasons. I think there are several things working in his favor. Now, I do think he's done a good job of overcoming some of his natural anxieties when things are not going his way. But it is funny in this age of crowd noise that is controlled by whoever's there in the stadium, you're not going to hear rumbling and grumbling if, he issues a couple of walks, and he's not going to feel that energy of 35,000 people clenching up and worrying about what's going to happen next. And then he gets more anxious. Like, none of that's even going to be there because the hometown guy is not going to be pouring in like anxiety noise for their own pitcher, right? So I think that very much works in his favor. Like you said, his history against the Padres, a lot of it has been at Petco. He did have his 16 strikeout game at Coors Field against the San Diego Padres as well. So it's a team he's had some success against. And there's the other thing that we've kind of alluded to here. There is the revenge factor. And I do think it's something that Jon Gray feeds on a bit. We saw the way he went after the Diamondbacks in 2018 after, as you mentioned, that wild card game in 17. I think he's very much aware, and I think this team is very much aware, whether the general public is or not, that series last year against the Padres that they should have won, the 4-game set that they should have swept with the 2 just embarrassing blown saves, absolutely derailed their entire campaign. And they take it personally. I think that it is just the general consensus that the Padres are the better team, despite the fact that they actually finished in last place in the NL West last year. And these Rockies have been to the postseason, and those Padres have not. I think they're out for it today. What do you think?
No, very much so. You're right in that instance. You know, they've got new duds. They're back to their brown and yellow, so they've got a little bit more swagger, and they've kind of become the darlings of a lot of baseball fans, and I think rightfully so, especially if you have a young player like Fernando Tatis Jr., which is phenomenal.
Very exciting.
You check off that box, and exciting guys.
Yeah.
You got the big name star power of Manny Machado. And you also have kind of sabermetric darlings like Tommy Pham, who they traded from Tampa, who is another one of those, sabermetric, darlings. So they're checking off a lot of boxes, and we're not even talking about their pitchers yet. They've got some guys that can throw some serious heat. Chris Paddock is a guy that, before his starts, he comes walking to the arena dressed like the Undertaker. He can be intimidating
right,
in that way.
Right.
You got a guy like Garrett Richards, who we're going to see tonight for the Padres, who I think a lot of people are going to, root for him in a lot of ways because he had so many, injury-plagued years, even across 3 seasons with the Angels where he was hurt and he only made 28 starts. He still had a 3.05 ERA in the AL West. Like, think about that. Usually when you're hurt, you have that 1 or 2 bad start that totally inflate your ERA. He was at a 3.05 ERA, so the Padres signed him on a 2-year deal, ultimately because they knew 2019 they weren't going to get a lot out of him, but 2020 was going to be his year to rebound. So, he's a name that's kind of forgotten about. He's only 32 years old, and again, just another one of those guys that the Padres look like the sexy pick right now, and whether the Rockies know it or not, it doesn't matter because they've got 2019 fresh in their head, and if the Padres want to chirp, that's going to make it all the more easier to come back hard and snipe back at them because it's not going to be the Rockies or Jon Gray against Coors Field a little bit because, hey, Coors Field, come on, you're not giving me the love and the vibes that I need, right? Yeah, I gave up 2 runs in the first inning, but I need more than that. No, it's just Rockies, Padres, and there's plenty of vitriol to keep the Rockies rolling along in this series, and with a win tonight, they will be in sole position of first place.
Yeah, I think it works out best for them that these aren't swapped. If they were coming home to play the Giants, you might be like, hey, that's nice. They're a worse team. You might get your feet wet at Coors Field, maybe get a couple easy wins in there. The worst thing that can happen to the Colorado Rockies after a 4-1 start and a day off is any kind of letdown, and then a letdown loss in a home opener to a bad team. You lose to the Padres, it happens. You expect them to be a tougher team this year, but you come out and you put a stamp down because these guys are not going to let up against these guys, as we're talking about here. They're just not going to. They remember Kravkak mentioning here in the comments, Jon Gray had to come in and pitch like they could not close out the Padres, and that he had to pitch in relief for Wade Davis in that series. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong for them, and they're going to do everything they can to put down their foot, especially because now we know that these games mean so much more extra. We've said in years past, in fact, I think I've even told this story on the podcast, but it's been a while. I was down there in Arizona for Game 1 in 2018, and the Rockies I think they actually lost that first game against the Diamondbacks. And then, there was this big question. Was it frustrating because those guys beat you out of the wild card last year? And there was all of these conversations. And I remember Ian Desmond in particular going, it's March. Like, this was, it wasn't even April yet. Like, you don't win or lose anything in baseball. It's a whole new season. We're a new team. They're a new team. Let's go. And that's the only right response in a 162 game season. In a 60 game season, Patrick.
Yeah, in a 60 game season, it's a sprint. You got to just go out there and get it. And they're going to be looking to do that. There's no two ways about it. And I think you're right. This is the better matchup, so you don't lose sight of the Padres and you're too focused on the Giants. Because look at what the Giants did the last couple games against the Padres, where Giants walked them off because, again, take your eye off the ball. Those Giants are a pesky team. Like, say what you will, there's only a few teams every year, and maybe there's only one every year that is just a pushover night in and night out. Even the Marlins, when they were bad in the late 2000s, they would always give the Mets a run for their money, and we've seen that. And when the Giants can be really bad, there's still going to be a thorn in the Dodgers side, in the Rockies side. All of those things are going to be true. So if you flip this series, that could have posed a problem. But as it were, no, you get the Padres right away. Let's have that. And then if they can win 2 out of 3, which is reasonable, you just can't guarantee sweeps, especially against a team that's of your caliber and as good as the Padres. But you win 2 out of 3, you keep that momentum going. You say, no, we got to keep our foot on the pedal, because that was only a 1-game difference against the Padres. It's not like we've got this massive lead in any way. We got to take 3 of the next 4. Let's go ahead and let's keep pushing it. And then, as I said on Twitter, I think a 5-2 homestand is what it's going to need to be to really keep, the vibrations high around this club, in the clubhouse. 4-3 is good. 4-3 is good, but anything less than that, you go, all right, well, they had a good run on the road, disappointing at home. Not the end of the world. Again, they're still going to be fine and in line for one of those 8 playoff spots. But right now the topic is winning the NL West, because that's on the table. Yes. This is only game 6, but it's on the table. You got to go 5-2 in this homestand if you want to keep discussing being the best team in the West.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got more good news for Rockies fans on why I think it's very possible, if not altogether likely, that they can pull that off. But before we do that, we've got to try to help you win a little bit of money. Now, hopefully you've joined us here for the live, because if not, if you're listening to the podcast, there's probably a small window for your opportunity to place some bets, and we've got, I think, a really good one for you for this evening. And if you're wondering what I mean by placing some bets, well, you gotta check out the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Download it now. Use that promo code DNVR, because if you do that, you get an odds boost to bet $20 to win $100 on a team of your choosing. There's all kinds of great stuff that we're going to keep you up to date on throughout the season, whether it's Colorado Rockies centric, the one today that we're going to give you, not related specifically to the Colorado Rockies. There have been some good ones. I don't know how the odds may have changed for those of you that got in. We went on DNVR Bets and talked about maybe take the Rockies to do some big things, and then if they get out to this great start, you can cash out. Interesting options there, because they're out to an interesting start, so you can do what you wish there. But the best thing that you can do for this whole situation is get a little skin in the game, have a little extra fun while you can with the baseball that we're going to get. Again, you download that top-rated DraftKings Sportsbook app. You use code DNVR when you sign up, because for a limited time, all users get a special odds boost to bet $20 to win $100 on a team of your choosing. You must be 21 or older, Colorado only. Other terms and conditions and eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. And here we have got, I think, a really interesting pick of the week for you.
Yeah, Drew was on this one. We went through to look at Friday's games, and there was a couple that I said, all right, let me earmark that, and Drew says, wait. How about Rays? You got Blake Snellzilla on the hill against the Orioles, who had a couple days off. I know they played in New York, but they've been scrambling a little bit. And the payout doesn't seem to be a lot, right? For the Rays, you'd have to bet 210 to win 100. So you're putting out a lot in order to win some money. But before Drew said any of that, he actually just said, I like the Rays big. So there's something you can do on DraftKings that's really cool, because it can be pretty black and white if you just say win or loss, and you're not going to win a lot of money, right? You got to bet $2 to win $1. So you're going to go over to where it says alternate run line. And what you can do is you can pick a team and give a different set amount of runs. So now it's no longer about wins and losses. It's about how many runs you think they're going to win by. So before, when I said if you just want to pick them to win straight up, you got to bet about $2 to win $1. Or if you think they're going to win big, like Drew and I think they are going to, you can give up 4 runs. And for every $1 you bet, you can win back 2.5. So for a $100 bet on the Rays to give 4 and beat the Orioles, you're going to win $255.
I love it. That's our pick of the week right there. You gotta like a team like the Rays, extremely talented. A team like the Orioles, extremely not. The Rays got their best pitcher on the hill. Alex Cobb for the Orioles, who started nicely, gave me a little bit of pause, but by started nicely, it means he went like 5 1/3 and gave up a couple of runs. And then the Orioles bullpen had to take over. So I still, I still really like those odds for sure. A few other things. Got a question that came in here. So before I talk about the pitching matchups a little bit more, Joseph asking, Drew, do you think Nolan will start to heat up? Short answer, yes. Long answer, yes. Yeah, he's going to heat up. He'll heat up soon. He's going to hit Yonkers. If you recall, last year it took him, I think, 5 or 6 games before he hit his first home run, and then he hit like 6 in a week or something like that. He's a little more hot and cold, I think, than people realize, because it so often balances out to incredible. So the cold stretches typically go about 20 plate appearances at most, and so that they're forgettable except for during those 20 plate appearances. So yeah, anytime he's cold is just good news for the eventual hot streak.
Yeah, it all balances out in the end. No two ways about it. That's why it's called an average. So, and the thing about those streaks is that they don't always come at home or on the road. Like he doesn't just go off at home and then on the road he slumps. Like it's touch and go. There's times where at Coors it's everybody else but Nolan, knocking in a couple runs, having multi-hit games, and you go, oh, Nolan only 1 for 5. He had a single. He doesn't look to be himself right now. And then same thing, you could be on the road and he's carrying the team single-handedly. It is strange. That's, I guess, maybe one of the good things about people not knowing all of the ins and outs about the Rockies. It's nice everybody wants to put Nolan on their team, and Cardinals fans are like, okay, so he'll be at third base. We got Goldie at first, and it's like pump the brakes. If they were to know about some of this streakiness and all of the pressure that he puts on himself, they might be a little bit more reticent. Now, I think he'd be fine in the Bronx. I think he'd be fine at Dodger Stadium. Any of those locations, it's going to balance out. But I just think it would stress him out. He'd look like either Roger Maris or Cal Ripken by the end of it, where his hair would just kind of fall out because he was just overstressed. But at the end of the year, the numbers would be there, and he'd be, just as phenomenal as anywhere else, and maybe wins a ring or two. But as it stands, he's in Colorado for 7 more years after this one,
Yeah.
guaranteed. We don't really think he's going anywhere, and his numbers
Yeah.
are going to be fine.
Yeah. And the more other guys produce and help win games when he knows he's not, the better the case is made that he'll want to stay here. The more he trusts Blackman, Story, guys like Dahl and McMahon, and Hilliard coming through big in some of those games, these pitchers doing well, those are the kinds of things that make Nolan stop thinking about what the grass might look like somewhere else, as it were. So I wanted to get into a few other elements. Like I was talking about some good news for Rockies fans in terms of how they can do on this homestand, in my opinion. You mentioned one of the big reasons to be, excited about these Padres from like a national perspective or just from a baseball perspective is the young pitcher Chris Paddock, who the Colorado Rockies will miss in this 3-game set. So
Right.
there's good news there. Further good news, Garrett Richards this evening against Jon Gray will make his first ever start at Coors Field, which can be a problem. Ask Steven Strasburg. Actually, Strasburg has never finished it out. The Washington Nationals go out of their way to make sure that Steven Strasburg does not pitch at Coors Field. I think the Cubs also do that for Jake Arrieta, or did that for Jake Arrieta. He's with the Phillies now. I don't know what their
So you're saying
policy on that
so you
is.
could basically write an article saying why you're more likely to see Steven Strasburg pitch for the Colorado Rockies at Coors Field than anything else. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
exactly right.
There's a greater chance of that happening than him just playing with the Nationals, which seems very logical. But no, you're right. Some of the teams definitely try to guard their guys against it. I think Richards is going to be fine. You mentioned Chris Paddock not pitching. That's huge for Colorado. And again, it's only his second year, but again, it's an advantage. It's an advantage for the
Yep.
Rockies. They're also not going to see Dinelson Lamet, who's a guy who,
Right.
he just signed really young, and he's still young now, but he's not, a spring chicken by any stretch of the imagination at 28 years old, but he's still a guy that people are really touting him as being something really special, and I think he will. He slotted in as their number 2 guy. So now, again, Rockies are facing 3, 4, and 5. Take that for what you will, but you win 2 out of 3 games against the Padres. You've won 2 out of 3 games against the Padres. So it's nice that, hey, things are starting to break the Rockies' way here, albeit just on the starting pitching front for the Padres.
Yeah, and of course, they've still got to come through and take advantage of that. That doesn't mean anything. The Lucchesi versus Freeland matchup is another one that I think bodes well for them. Lucchesi's been on a limited workload so far. The Rockies have had some success against him at times, and other times he's gotten the better of them. It's been back and forth, but he only went 3 2/3 in his first outing. So that's again good news, especially if the Rockies can continue their offensive approach of getting into bullpens. If they can get them worked in that first game and then really get them worked in the second one, it bodes incredibly well for the third. I also like that one because, as we were talking about with both Nolan and also Trevor, neither of those guys has gotten especially hot with the exception of the 2-homer game for your shortstop there. But having a lefty to face from both of those guys feast on left-handed pitching, who isn't Mike Minor dotting the edge every single time he just pitched an extraordinary game. Lucchesi has the ability to do that. There's just a lower chance, and so I think that bodes well for the righties in the lineup who need to get going, and I would expect we'll see Matt Kemp DHing at Coors Field against a lefty in that game, and that'll be really fascinating to see. All the numbers there if you've subscribed to the DNVR.com and you read that article. And then, finally, I even, think that matchup of Zach Davies and Antonio Senzatella is a nice, solid toss-up between two guys of similar profiles and similar resumes and just, could go either way on the mound. We've said a lot about the progress of Senzatella, but that's one I think, again, why the bullpen strategy early on has to be so good. I think, and then you think about last year's series that we talked about with these Padres. I think it's going to come down to the bullpens, and so hold on to your butts.
For sure. The real cool thing I like about that Sunday matchup, like you said, it's Rockies number 4 starter versus Padres number 5 starter, but Zach Davies is sneaky good.
It's quality.
He's been around for a while. He's only so you're saying, okay, wait, he's 27 years old. How can he have been around for a while? He was traded for Gerardo Parra. Like, that's how long he's been around. You forget when you're a minor leaguer, you're still considered around. So
Right.
He never even got to play with the Orioles, who drafted him. 27 years old, and he's been sneaky good. Sub-4 ERA with the Brewers, and I think he's a lot better than people probably realize. He has pitched at Coors Field before. He's been all right in that start. Trying to find where he was at. I lost it.
I think it was 5 innings, 2 runs given up. So, yeah.
He was with that Brewers team in 2018 that swept the Rockies. I don't think he featured in that series at all, but he's right there as a quality guy. So, I think the 3 through 5 matchups. You're right, are line up really well, and it's kind of very symmetrical with the 2 lefties going against each other. So.
Yeah.
This will be interesting. This will be a big battle, and you kind of worry about the Giants series when the Giants series comes. But hopefully, you won't have to tax that bullpen quite as much. At least not the most important of those arms in the bullpen.
Yeah, the best possible news or best case scenario for the Colorado Rockies would be to take advantage of Garrett Richards not quite feeling out Coors Field. You hope that happens, and you get at them early, and you just set the tone for the whole series, and you can't have those letbacks. But obviously, the sooner they get into the bullpen in game 1, the better for these Colorado Rockies. However they achieve that, whether it's driving up the pitch count or just scoring a bunch of runs and getting them out of there.
And San Diego's bullpen hasn't been as good as Colorado's for right now. Again, a lot of that has to go to the other night with the Giants kind of coming back on them. They've got some young electric arms, with Emilio Pagan, Drew Pomerantz, you might see a lot of, especially with a lot of the lefties that are in the Rockies lineup.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him. Kirby Yates.
Can't recall. Do not recall.
Top closers in the game. So
Kirby Yates is good.
And Tim Hill was a really solid pickup that they made right before it was their second, spring training 2.0 deal. They got this lefty from the Royals. Ultimately, they didn't have room for Franchi Cordero, so basically they said, "Look, we got to cut a guy," and then they go and bring back, a lefty guy who's very capable. So that ended up being a really nice move for them. So I expect it maybe not to be as high scoring. It definitely won't be as high scoring as the 92 runs that they scored in the middle of last June, but I definitely expect it to be, kind of on the edge of your seat, just like that entire series was last year.
Yeah. So again, hold on to your butts. All right, we got some questions to answer here. I want to hear what you all are most looking forward to in this opening series, or Coors Field baseball, or just for this team on this homestand. We're going to finish out answering some of these questions. Do got to remind everybody, though, that the most fun and popular free golf game in the world is WGT Golf, and you can get it at DNVRGolf.com, either on your phone or your computer. Again, 100% totally for free. You get right out there within minutes. You start whacking the golf ball around, playing closest to the hole or full stroke play on world famous golf courses, including Bethpage Black and St. Andrews. You can join now up to 3, well, not up to 3, the third country club. You can't join the first 2 because they're full. We've had so many people who are having so much fun with this because they get to come in, challenge each other in the DNVR community, challenge us on the DNVR staff, talk a little bit of trash, play in weekly, weekend tournaments, of which our staff is getting a little bit better. Rudo had a nice finish last time. Patrick's been doing well. Harrison's getting up there. I continue to be terrible. But if you want to join us all, remember, it's totally free. You got nothing to lose. Nothing whatsoever. So go to DNVRGolf.com, download it on your phone or laptop, and join us out there on the digital links. Yeah, it's always fun. Okay. Few questions coming in. Joseph, I did want to talk a little bit about, what the atmosphere is going to be like. So asking no fan board cutouts at Coors. It looks like they're going with classic players and people from the organization, which is something that we saw Oakland do. Interesting. I could have gone either way. I really would have liked to see the fans thing and the idea of, if the ball hits you, then they'll mail it to you. If it hits your cutout, I really like that idea. It's nice to see the faces from years past, and I'm sure I'll enjoy looking out and seeing all of them, Patrick. But, that's a 7-10 split. Either way, I don't think there was a wrong answer to that question. But
I think having the legends is great. I mean, you can do all of these things, but having some of the legendary players is great. I hate bringing it up, but growing up watching the Yankees, they had Old Timers Day, and sure, there were some Hall of Fame players that played every year, or really good players on some championship teams. But each year it would kind of build, and you'd learn more about players. And sure, the Rockies only just got their first guy in the Hall of Fame, but you'd be crazy to not say you could almost just sell tickets for an Old Timers game at 1 o'clock and not even get admission to the night game. But I think you would still pack Coors Field out if you had Juan Pierre coming back and Matt Holliday and Garrett Hampson. Like, let the younger fans learn about the 2007 Rockies, the early expansion era guys. And when you do this long enough, what happens is you slowly but surely check off these boxes of, oh, wow, look at that. Old Timers Day for the Rockies lines up for when the Phillies come to town. Hey, Joe Girardi, come out and take some batting practice with Dante Bichette and share those stories about how you were going to call yourselves the Boulder Bashers, but instead Dante came up with the Blake Street Bombers. Like, all of those things, that's all part of the history of the Rockies. So I'd love to see them celebrate in that way. This is still, I think, a really good way of getting closer to that. As far as doing the thing with the fans, the one thing that was suggested on the broadcast was, because of the rain that we get and the sporadic nature of the weather changing, is that every time a drop comes down, they're gonna have to send somebody from the PR team to run down and take the cardboard cutouts out so they don't get soaked and don't get warped. And there are so many different details. You could do them up in the second tier, but then you're not really going to be seeing them. Only when they pan out from center field.
Right.
So then what's the point? You're going to feel cheated. So you either do it right or you don't do it at all. And I don't know if there is a right way, at least not yet.
Totally agree. As we move on through these questions here, I do want to remind everyone that there is a watch party for the home opener this evening down the DNVR bar. You got to RSVP for that one. For the other games, remember, no matter the time of game, the bar will be open if the Colorado Rockies are on TV, and I'm going to be down there a lot the next couple of days, both before and after. But the watch party tonight, you got to RSVP to make sure that you get yourself some reserved space so that we can keep everyone in their isolated groups and keep everybody safe, but also a part of a community of people watching some baseball. You can find the link to that RSVP on our Twitter and Facebook page. So go there, check all that stuff out, and I hope to see you down there this evening. Mile High Mems asking, will Hampson's role be defined by his defense or his offense? That's a really interesting question, actually. I'm not sure I know the answer to that. I mean, I think it's a tough balance, right? Bud Black would say it can't be all one or the other. That as great a defense as you can play, you got to hit some to get put into the lineup. That's a really, really tough one. I would actually say, because they know his defense will be there, his role is going to be more defined by his offense. Can he prove himself to be at all a valuable offensive player? And if he can, he's going to get to play a lot more. And if not, they're going to continue to see him as a utility man, plug and play kind of guy.
Yeah, it's funny. I have the exact same reason as you, but it's for that reason why I think
you go the opposite.
His role is defined by defense. It's kind of like, because he can play multiple positions, that gives him more at bats, right? If you're in the game because you can play left field because of a matchup, you're going to have an opportunity to be, play well offensively. And even if he does really well at the plate, I don't know that that's going to be enough to really, change the lineup in a lot of ways. Maybe he gets one extra start here or there instead of, like Tapia. But again, with the fact that one's right-handed, one's left-handed, I think they're just going to go true to those platoons. There's a chance the only way he can break out and maybe be starting 5 out of every 7 days, really become their Ben Zobrist, is if he defines himself more offensively. But I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think he's going to overly exceed expectations to the point that you go, we have to now find a spot. When really now it's more like, you know what? How can we just plug and play? And wow, we've got this guy that gives us so much flexibility because he's capable of doing it defensively. We're going to put him in the game, and thus he'll have those offensive opportunities. I think his defense is what leads that way and gets him into the lineup more than just the straight quality of his bat.
I think that's an interesting answer. I like that. EJ Sanchez asking a similar question. Do you guys think the right-handed, left-handed strict lineup could mess with certain guys' rhythm? There's always that possibility when you go to platooning. I will say I don't think they're going to go to a 100% strict lineup of platooning. I think there are going to be times when they already had one, didn't they? They started Hampson against a righty the other day. You're going to see that. Did they? Was it against a lefty?
Because he bats righty, so it was against Minor, right?
No. The final game of the Oakland set against Frankie Montes, didn't he? I think Hampson started in that one. No, we're already losing track of these early games. But either way,
you were right. I'm sorry.
So they will occasionally start, a right-handed hitter against a right-handed pitcher that isn't Nolan or Trevor, the guys who are always in there, precisely for this reason, I think, to avoid anybody falling into too much of a rut on the bench, especially if the guys that they want to play. Obviously, there are some guys we haven't seen yet, like Fuentes. They apparently don't care if he's in any kind of a rhythm, and that makes a certain amount of sense. And they don't care if Chris Owings is in any kind of offensive rhythm, because Chris Owings has never been in an offensive rhythm in his life. I'm sorry, it's just true. It's not what he's on the team to do. Play defense, run the bases good. That's what Owings is there to do. But they'll continue to get Hampson, Tapia, Hilliard, and McMahon at bats, and you've got to hope that they navigate it well.
For sure, it is a hard thing to balance, but again, all things considered, when you compare the numbers, I think it just, even before numbers were such an active part of our game, in the 50s, Casey Stengel, the manager of the Yankees, didn't need to look at numbers to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to platoon these guys, and he won a couple World Series in his day, to say the least. So the numbers bear out that, you know what, even if a guy's rhythm gets messed up, even if Matt Kemp isn't starting as frequently as he has, the last decade of his career, the team overall is going to be better off for it, right? So you just kind of have to deal with that, be a professional, be ready when your number gets called, and just hope for the best. And I think while it's not ideal for each individual player, it is ideal for the team to kind of have this layout. And as far as Josh Fuentes goes, there's a campaign online that has started called #FreeFuentes. So if you're out there and you're a big proponent of the Fuente, have at that one.
The Fuente, love it. Hurley once. Over under 5 home runs for the Rocks this weekend.
It's a good number. It's a good line.
That's a good number.
I would take the over. Yeah, I mean they haven't really shown that yet so far all season. I think they might have 5 for the 5 games, but they're at Coors Field. I think if they can again stay patient and run up the pitch count for the Padres starters, then they can get them out maybe after 5 innings. And if so, you're going to tap into that bullpen. Some of those young guys are going to miss their spots, and you're going to be able to hit 6, 7 home runs over this 3-game series.
Wow. Yeah, I like that. That is a tough one. I'm tempted to take the out here and actually go with a push. I think the Colorado Rockies hit exactly 5 home runs.
It's a good number, yeah.
This 3-game set. So, yeah, you set the over-under at the exact right spot there, Hurley. Mile High Mems coming in. Our pitching has been far better than I expected. Are the fanless games a factor, or are we better? I will answer first by saying both and hand it off to you, Sir Patrick of House Lyons.
What was the question? Yeah, no, the pitching has been, as best as you could possibly, hope for it to be. And that's not to say it's been unrealistic. We're not looking at Jon Gray having gone 8 shutout innings and Marquez 2 starts of 8 shutout innings and Kyle Freeland doing much of the same. It's really just been all you need for them to do, right? And maybe a little bit better and maybe a little bit lucky too. That you're not always going to get away with having those runners on base and leaving them stranded. That's just not realistic. They've given up, a lot of hard hit balls that haven't fallen in for hits. So, some of that has to do with how good the Rockies defense is. Some of it has to do with the smaller ballparks that they've been playing in.
Yep.
Now, granted, Oakland's got a lot of foul territory, so that's not entirely true. But again, that's one of the issues with Coors Field. Isn't so much that you're hitting so many more home runs, but you're getting hits where you wouldn't get them in normal places because there's so much extra ground to cover. The Rockies have had 8 different players in the last 27 seasons win a batting title. That's insane. And that's because a couple extra balls fall in, that boosts up your batting average, and you take advantage of those things. So the Rockies are going to be at a disadvantage now being at home. But the only real stat that matters as far as the starting pitching and the bullpen and just the pitching in general is, does your team have more runs than the other team? That's it. Keep your team in the game. Sometimes, I went to a ball game. It was 1-0. Blue Jays, Orioles, Camden Yards. It was 1-0. The guy who gave up 1 run gave up 1 hit. He gave up a solo home run to Harold Baines. He lost the game. You have to, again, that's the context that baseball games are played in. Are you better than the other team? Not, hey, as long as I pitch good. If I can go 8 innings and only give up 2 runs to this Orioles team, man, with Cal Ripken Jr., Albert Bell, et cetera, my team has a good chance to win. Yes, they have a good chance to win. But on that given day, it was not enough. So the bottom line is, as long as the pitching hangs in there, and even if Jon Gray does give up 2 runs in the first, or he does get knocked around for 3 runs in the third, something like that, as long as the Rockies are still in it, as long as he's giving them a chance to contend, as long as he's giving them a chance to stay in the game, he will have done his job. It's being the bridge to the bullpen. It's eating up enough innings and keeping your team in the game so that you do a competent job. Yeah, you want to dominate. Yeah, you want to pitch really well. And I think we will still see that during this homestand. But if certain players' numbers get impacted negatively because they give up a 3 or 4 run inning, if you go 6 innings, that's not the worst thing in the world. A quality start is 6 innings, 3 earned runs, and what do we say? A Coors Field quality start is
6 and 4
innings, 4 runs.
Yeah.
So a 4-run inning is going to balloon your stats up in your ERA, particularly because it's only your second start of the year. So that's small potatoes. It's did you win 2 out of 3 against the Padres? If so, your pitching did a good job. Probably didn't do great, but it still did a good job. And really, that's the only thing you need right now.
And I just think they're good. And Jill asks, is Freeland back? Again, yep, that's my answer.
He pitched on Sunday. He's back.
LOL. Yes, obviously it's only been 1 start. And if he does it again, I think we'll all feel much more confident saying, okay, there was, as I've often said, you got to look at the process just as much, if not more, than the results when you're looking at 1 game. And everything about the process for Freeland was working in ways that it was not last year. His mechanics were smoother. His pitches were moving how he wanted them to. He was hitting his spots, let's say, 7 or 8 times out of 10, as opposed to 5 times out of 10, which was kind of how often he was hitting his spots last year. He wasn't making mistakes over the middle of the plate. Everything was different. If it was just a 1-game phenomenon, that would be a bit strange, but not impossible, right? But I think it was very clearly the result of changes he made to his mechanics. He took out that hesitation. It's much more smooth. Everything's different there. And him getting back to an approach that he had gotten away from a little bit last year. So as long as he stays there, I think, yeah, you're going to see. In his rookie season, right before he was a Cy Young contender, I had the worst ever nickname for him. It was Quality Start Kyle. We just went over the numbers, right? Isn't that just the worst nickname of all time? Jake Shapiro is at least a third responsible for that, by the way. He encouraged me. But because that's what you could count on him for before he really ratcheted it up and put himself in that Cy Young conversation, you could just count on him for a quality start. And that's the guy you need this season. The guy who goes out and gives you 5 or 6 innings, 3, or as we said at Coors Field, maybe 4 runs, keeps you in the game. That's the Kyle Freeland they need. And I do think that Kyle Freeland is indeed back.
100% agreed. It goes back to the conversation about Nolan Arenado, how he might go 0 for 20 in a stretch, but that just means he's bound to go 11 or 12 for 20, right? It's the law of averages. And, this entire 10-month offseason has been about, well, who is Kyle Freeland? Okay? Take the average of what he did in 2018, 4th in the NL Cy Young. Take what he did in 2019 with his 6 ERA, and take the average of that, and you basically have what he did in 2017. And I think we won't really know entirely who Kyle Freeland is until the end of this season. So you got to give him those 11, 12 starts, and then we can really say, okay, now we know a little bit who he's closer to. Is he closer to that 19 or that 18? Right. And it's probably going to be a little closer towards 18, but he's gotta really go there and earn it. And that's the fun thing with left-handers too, is that so many of them, for whatever reason, it just takes them longer to figure things out. It's like a fine wine in a lot of ways. I mean, Jamie Moyer did it, to the age 49, laughed, ha ha ha, we all had a laugh. But guess what? He was a lefty. His best seasons were at age 40. Randy Johnson still did it at 40. He didn't really come into his own until his late 20s.
And the whole misnomer about the Jamie Moyer thing is that it was this big dumb joke when he did the thing for Colorado. And look, he shouldn't have been their opening day starter. And no, he never went out there and you were like, wow, look at him go. And I think he lost his first 4 or 5 starts before finally getting that record-breaking win, that just like momentous win at 49 years old. But he was not terrible. Go back and look at it. No. He wasn't getting shelled at 49 years old either. Like he still had enough to be out there and be competitive. So I think sometimes that gets locked. It's just been used so often, rightfully so, as an example of Rockies inept pitching over the year, that a 49-year-old Jamie Moyer was their opening day starter that one time. But he was nowhere near as terrible as he was remembered. If he'd have gotten a little bit of help from his offense that year, they could have won 3, he could have won 3-4 games easily. Which is pretty impressive for a 49-year-old. Will, with another pitching question, how much longer are the starting pitchers still going to be on a pitch limit? 1 or 2 more starts? I would guess 1, and I would say that even if a guy in his next start is really going well, which we haven't seen that yet. Even Marquez with his 8 strikeout performance against the A's wasn't as locked in as we've seen him, so no reason to push it there. If he was as locked in as he was in San Francisco, a couple of years ago when he threw that complete game shutout, then I think Buddy would let him throw over 100 pitches if he was really that locked in his next time out. Or Jon Gray today, if he's striking out 16 Padres and he's at 90 pitches through 8 innings, would he go back out there again for the 9th? Yeah, I think he would. But I think that's incredibly unlikely. All other things up there. If you're at 80 pitches through 6 and you've done your quality start job, no reason not to just hand the ball to the bullpen early on for solid pacing of your season, right?
Yeah, a lot of it is context, because if a guy is dealing, you just don't want to lose that momentum. And although, Bud has said in the last couple of days, like, no, I'm managing the game kind of the way I normally do, but I do think there is more of an urgency. And really, I shouldn't say urgency, because there's been nothing too urgent. The Rockies have just looked really solid throughout. So it's been more of a let's sleeping dogs lie. Like, hey, this guy's going. Let's keep rolling along with it. And I think with the pitch counts, I'm hesitant to maybe say it would be 2 starts, because 2 starts is this series at Coors Field, right? So it's like, okay, you know what? Jon Gray's going to have 2 starts at home, so after his next one, now we'll take the training wheels off and just kind of let him go. But it's not even so much how many pitches, because we talked about this with Gray's start on Saturday against the Rangers, is that if he could have gotten out of that jam, he could have gone 7 innings. He still could have had 2 more innings. It's putting the stress on the arm in those high stress innings. Like, it's one thing to throw 100 pitches over 7 innings, but if you've thrown 40 just in the first, that's
Right.
that stress right there. You go, oh,
Right.
he's got 60 more left. It's like, no, he's already worked crazy hard.
Yeah.
It's like if you've gone out to get a little exercise and you're going for a jog, but if you start running too quick, at the start and you're sprinting, now the last half of that jog that you want to do is so hard and stressful because you didn't pace yourself, right? And that's what it's about. So if Jon Gray is just pacing himself and he's really not having too many 20 pitch innings, then yeah, he'll go close to 100 pitches, especially if he's dealing, right? But a lot of it's going to be context. Buddies and his staff, they're just going to err on the side of, you know what, this could bring about an injury. Maybe not right now. Like that, nothing like that was going to happen in Gray's first start of the season. But what happens if he keeps going on this trajectory? By his third start, now maybe he's got some shoulder soreness. So you know what, we got a bullpen loaded full of guys. Let's get them a little bit more time, more opportunity, and that allows you to not tax these starters too quick, too early.
Absolutely. We've got a few more questions here I want to get into. Not going to cut any of them off for this special holiday opening day. And to thank all of you for joining us here for the live, I'm going to get to as many of them as possible, especially because you guys have been coming in with some really smart stuff, some heavy thinking questions we've had to consider quite a bit. And it's probably because y'all got yourselves educated at MSU Denver Online. That's all I can surmise, is that you're coming in with all this good stuff because you know what a quality education you can get when you go to msudenver.edu/online. You pick up some extra skills. Maybe you start out a new degree. Maybe you're finishing up an old degree you've always been meaning to get to. Whatever the case, man, they got programs, they got classes, and they got teachers suited for your needs, perfectly suited for these times, because they are experts at the digital education thing. They've been doing it for years and not just the last couple of weeks. So again, check them out at msudenver.edu/online. A few more questions coming in. Ryan asking, do we see Brendan Rodgers this season if everyone stays healthy? That's another tough one. We've talked about this a little bit before. It's going to be tough. He's going to have to really be raking out there at the satellite team, and we're going to have no idea that that's the case. I think with no injuries, it's going to be tough for Rodgers to get himself into this lineup, especially because sitting him on the bench doesn't do the team a whole lot of good either, just to bring him up to the major league level. So they're in a tough spot there with Rodgers, and it'd be disappointing for everyone involved not to see him. But at this point, again, if a healthy team, I would take the under. If there's an injury to an infielder, the chances increase quite a bit.
Yeah, we might not see him until late in the season. I was kind of surprised to see him when we did last year, because he hadn't been doing too many big things in Albuquerque at that time. But the time was right for them to make that move, and that was fine. And that was just more about his development, about not stagnating, and just saying, hey, let's give you that cup of coffee. And it was short lived. But the thing that ended up happening with him getting injured on while on the 40-man roster, was that he basically got almost a full season's worth of service time. So he's at 136 days. You need 180 for it to be considered a full season. So there's really only 30 or 40 some days that he would have need to have been on a normal roster for him to continue getting service time at a normal rate. So I don't know how much of it is just his shoulder or how much of it is the Rockies saying, well, you know what, if we don't really activate him until the final 2 weeks of the season, then you know what, we're going to get another year of Brendan Rodgers being a Colorado Rockies player. So that's a factor.
That's right.
That's just something that teams do in order to, keep control over players, especially in their prime. So if they do that and they're getting great contributions for everybody else who plays second base, there's no reason to essentially miss out on having Brendan Rodgers on this team in 6 years from now when he's in his prime at 29 years old. That's
Right.
what it would cost if you bring him up now.
Right. A couple more questions that I'm going to combine in one because they're on the same topic here. Ouroboros asking, how many teams do you think can actually play the full 60-game season?
Ooh.
And Rick saying, tough question, but why wouldn't MLB do an Arizona bubble? Not sure this season can play out. Rick, I'll start with yours just because we've talked about it a little bit, and the timing on that was just terrible with the numbers out of Arizona. You're right to point out that that's, that in Florida are the spots that have the facilities capable of hosting several baseball games at once. The unfortunate thing there is that players were really not inclined to go to two places that had skyrocketing numbers and still do. And you even have to wonder, you look at Miami and where did that start? We don't know. Was it, they were up in Philly, so we don't know exactly. Also, as Ryan points out, it is 117 degrees in Arizona. Like there were a number of factors for why that wasn't able to come together. But those are the big ones.
Yeah, I think that. What was the first question about? How many teams?
Oh, how many teams do you think it? Six
so
of them.
I'm gonna say 20%. I think that's it. It'll just gonna be kind of a luck thing. And as far as the Arizona bubble, I think we still might see that for the playoffs.
Yeah, I think you're right. Or a tournament of some kind that the season may even just have to turn into. We've talked about that too.
Sure, they're just going to want to reduce the amount of travel that the teams have, getting on either chartered flights, which I think that's what ended up getting the Marlins. So it wasn't even that they were jumping on a domestic flight, but again, it would probably move to Arizona only because the facilities are a lot closer together than in Florida, because Florida has a whole eastern coast of teams. There's only about 4 or 5 there anyway, but still, with Arizona, if you've ever been down there, the 2 farthest located teams are 45 minutes away. That's it, drive. That's it. It's fantastic down there. So, if the season has to shut down, they have to get through a lot of the season in order for them to say, okay, we're going to take a timeout and then start the playoffs. Sure, NHL, NBA did that, but they were through a majority of their season.
Right.
A majority. They're past the halfway points. Baseball isn't even going to be playing 81 games. So they're not even doing half of a season.
Right. When do we,
yeah. It wouldn't shock me if it was like, hey, if we can get through 30 games, we'll just do some kind of round-robin tournament. They could get creative. But at that point, they would have to create some type of bubble. And it would have to be down in Arizona for sure.
Yeah. Here's an interesting one coming in from Kravkek. If today were the trade deadline and standings are what they are, what are we doing? I don't know that there is, if you're just looking at the numbers right now, it's funny to even say this, but there's really nowhere you're pointing out and going, well, that's the glaring weakness on the team so far. The bullpen has maybe been the biggest strength, and you don't expect that to continue, so I would probably still go there. You can never have too many arms. I don't see a position that needs to shake up. Maybe if a big bat became available and you didn't feel like you were getting, again, it's only we've seen what we've seen, right? I can't project. Matt Kemp hasn't blown me away, but he hasn't been by any means awful. But maybe you go with somebody you feel like as a DH could alter your lineup if a bat like that was available. Best and safest route for these Colorado Rockies at this trade deadline or any trade deadline is to go get a guy with some good stuff who can pitch good.
Yeah, by the standings are what they are. I don't think you mean 4-1. More like, hey, first place in the West.
If the Rockies are first place in the West at this point in the season in a normal trade deadline, yeah, I'm going out and getting another arm still.
Yeah, I don't think they would do anything too crazy because, again, depending on how you look at the standings, there's a tie with the Dodgers and the Padres, right? And you got to also assume that there's only going to be 2 wild card teams. So you could go out and load up, maybe get 3-4 guys, one real premier player. And if you don't win the division, you're one Archie Bradley triple away from saying, wow, we gave up all of that for 2 months of this and more heartbreak. He's not going to hit 2. It'll be a different reliever. It'll be different relievers in the D-back.
It'll be Mark Melanson this time.
There we go. That makes more sense. Colorado's own. Jinx.
Now I'm already mad at him for this thing we just made up.
Yeah, but I think, again, Colorado's been conservative, so I think you would see what you saw in 2017. Go get an arm like a Pat Neshek or someone else, and go get a bat that can help you out. And it's funny because in 2018 they got Sung Won-Oh, and they didn't get a bat other than the fact that they did. They got Matt Holliday. They just didn't have to trade anything for him. So, you also have this issue right now in this world that we live in where the rosters aren't going to expand. They're going to detract. So you can't even, bring in a guy as a depth piece to kind of be on your bench because it's not going to expand to 32, 35 guys in September. It was originally going to only be, I think, up to 28. No, it was going to be 26, I think. So it's just 26-man roster all season long. So it's quirky, but I don't think you would have seen anything too crazy. I know you would like to say, hey, maybe you can get George Springer, a nice right-handed bat from the Astros, because he's going to be a free agent. So you say, okay, let's get him. But I don't think it would be anything major simply because you do have 2 other teams also tied for first place with the Rockies. If they were head and shoulders above the rest, then you're already looking to the first and second round of the playoffs. As it were, you still have to consider the question of, well, we are 1 wild card game away from having our whole season over the day after the season ends.
Right. And you need those guys to build sustainability, as the Rockies have shown. The only way that they can remain competitive over the course of several years is to have those guys in the farm system come up. Every single one of these dudes we're talking about right now, with the possible exception, I guess, of Marquez, who was traded for as a minor leaguer and did technically come up with some Rockies seasoning, but Gray, Freeland, Dahl, McMahon, Otto, Blackman, all these guys, homegrown players, and you need the next. You need Rogers and eventually Zach Veen and Ryan Valade and Colton Welker and all of these guys, and hopefully Ryan Rollison to come along behind them and be those guys. And if you start moving those dudes out of your organization for a half a year of George Springer, you're doing yourself a disservice, especially, as Patrick said, as we've seen, when you're one effing Archie Bradley triple away from epic disaster, and you all know that. I don't want to end this on epic disaster. I want to end this on Mile High Mems asking or stating, Bard's stuff looks really good. Am I wrong?
No, of course not. It looks great.
No.
It looks fantastic. It looks exactly as, it probably would have looked if he had, never had the yips. That kind of stuff happens. Rick Ankiel was a guy who had the yips, and while he never really, came back to the mound, although there was actually some rumors that even after he had retired, he was about to be on the Hall of Fame ballot, and he was talking about maybe trying to get back into pitch at the beginning of his 2019. But he ended up reclaiming his career and was very productive as an outfielder. So, these guys are athletes kind of long after they're seen as productive. But, for Bard, it was more of that mental piece. And if you get over it, then you've now reclaimed something. And although he might be a 32-year-old guy, he doesn't have those innings on his arm. He's
right.
Much younger than that. So
his arm, his arm is 27. Yeah, no, and I mean, you could see as you're watching him pitch, you can just go, oh, this was the guy that was dominant there for the Red Sox for a minute, and that was so highly touted as a prospect. And you watch him pitch now in this year of 2020, and you go, oh yeah, no, I see why. Any scout or any person who was with the Red Sox or against the Red Sox, I should say, that year went, this guy is incredible. And then, he falls away, and baseball has a way of forgetting about people. But people have a way of reminding just who in the hell they are. And
it's crazy because, Wade Davis he's the veteran guy of the staff. He's going to be turning 35 soon. And there's no other pitcher in this bullpen right now, age 30 or over, other than Daniel Bard, who's 35. So actually, you go from, what is it? I think Tyler Kinley he's 29 and a half.
29, yeah.
Then you got to go all the way up to Wade Davis, who's going to be 35, and then Daniel Bard, who's almost the rookie of the team, right? He's a little over 35 years old. So
it's amazing.
It's unique. It's exciting. And again, it's why right now it's a good time to be a Rockies fan in Colorado with all the craziness going on. There's juice. There's life in this town. There's life in this team. And it definitely is something promising to look forward to day in and day out.
Will makes a great point. It's not even just in the bullpen. He says, are there any other pitchers on the active roster that are even 30? None of your main starters are. Gray, Marquez, Freeland, Senzatella, Chichi Gonzalez, and Jeff Hoffman, all under 30 years old. Ashton Goudeau. Is Ashton Goudeau, the guy who's yet to make his MLB debut, the oldest of all the names I just said? At 29 or 28?
He's 28. Yeah,
so he's
just underneath. Yeah.
Hoff and Chichi, are they 29 yet? I know they're right.
They're
in
going
too,
to be, yeah. So Chichi,
yeah.
Gray, and Goudeau could have all pitched for the same high school. They're all of the same year.
The same year in school, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's fantastic. So as Patrick said, it's a great time to be excited about this young team that's playing well. They're coming home. I know you can't get out there to Coors Field, which is really, really tough, but you can come out to the DNVR bar. Like I said, if you're coming out for opening night, make sure you RSVP. Otherwise, they won't let you in the door, because we just got to be very, very safe about that. The rest of the time, I know the bar hours say we open at 4 o'clock. That's true unless there is a Colorado sports of any kind on before that. We open early for afternoon baseball games, and I'm going to be down there for the weekend. I'll see you before or after the games if I can catch you. Obviously, I got to do some stuff. Got to get down there and see what it's like. And so you don't want to miss any of it. You got to follow us on social media. At Drew Creasman, at Patrick D. Lyons, at DNVR_Rockies. Got to subscribe to the DNVR.com so that you don't miss out on any of our written content. You got to get some cool merch. You got to get that mask, and you got to get discounts on stuff. The new Larry Walker shirt, totally fire, and for members only at this point. You got to check that one out. I think it's among the best that we've ever done. Other than that, we can only ask that you remain absolutely awesome out there. We will remain absolutely Patrick Lyons and Drew Creasman in here. And until next time, we will see you near the ballpark.